Hello and welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm Ed Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. If you want to learn how to support the channel and its mission to normalize atheism and deconversion, stay tuned to the end of the video for more information. Today is Rabyd Reflections, and I want to, it's kind of more freewheeling. I usually talk about what's on my mind and things that are like that, so we'll see what happens. But also today, I also wanted to, every once in a while I get the question, what would it take to bring you back to Christianity? That's a very interesting and complicated question, I suppose. First of all, I'm not sure it's possible anymore. I'll openly admit that. I think the problems with Christianity are way too numerous and way too bad for me to even consider going back. They have a lot of damage control and a lot of things to do. But if I were to narrow down a few reasons, I guess I have a top 5 list here of things that if were changed, Christianity would definitely be a viable religion for me. Now, I want you to understand I'm not necessarily picking on Christianity here. It was my old faith and it's something that I have discarded. But at the same time, I now prefer the life I live. I'm much more, despite the heat making me depressed and the bright light making me anxious and, all the hypersensitivity issues I deal with, I at least know that that's what that is. I'm not playing a game of demons or stalking me or any of that kind of crap. So I deal with reality now a lot better, and I deal with all the things around me better. But at the same time, if there were certain things that were changed about Christianity, I wouldn't be able to deny the fact that it suddenly becomes more truthful. And so here are my top 5 things of what it would take for Christianity to get me to come back. And they're not in any particular order per se. I suppose they go up in importance as far as anything goes. So, we'll just take them as is. Number 1, demonstrate that Christianity actually transforms lives. See, the problem is all religions can in some way or shape, form, transform lives. They can take, people become religious and that seems to transform their lives. But when you look at actual life transformation, there's very good psychological reasons why people come to a realization that the way they're living their life isn't really going that well, and so they change it. And it basically is, religion becomes the drug or whatever vice they had before, gets replaced by this thing that stimulates the same areas of their brain, but it's more socially acceptable. Okay, so if a guy is a drunk and a drug addict and an abuser and suddenly he becomes a Christian, a Buddhist, or whatever, and their life transforms, the things that religion is doing the same things to his brain that all the other things, the booze, the sex, and all that did to his life before. But now it's more socially acceptable because it seems to lead in more of a positive direction. And so some people say that even if religion isn't true, this is one of its things. But I don't think that shows a genuine transformation. It just shows that the nature of religiosity can transform a person's life, maybe. But you could also have that transformation on a secular level without the religion at all. I've seen people, take different hobbies and move forward with them. And so it's more, that becomes the thing that stimulates their brain instead of the drugs or sex or whatever that they had a problem with. And so there's this transformation that humans go through psychologically that religion tries to take credit for, and it may not necessarily be the case. And so whether or not any religion transforms lives, and Christianity claims to transform lives, but it's funny as an atheist and running an atheist channel, how many times I have people come on my channel and basically, act like jerks. It's like, I thought you were a follower of Christ. I thought you were a follower of Jesus. And then they demonstrate that they don't even know what that means. Love your enemies seems to be gone from their brain. Don't call anybody a fool, because you're in danger of hellfire. That seems to escape them. Give a reason for the hope that's within you with respect, okay? All the things that the interaction aspects that the Bible tells you is there. I mean, it seems like if Christianity transforms people's lives, there would be no need for commandment, okay? Instead, though, you get different Christian commands, okay, instead of the other ones. Okay, now we've got this transformed life, but demonstrated actually transformed lives, and it's the only explanation for that transformed life because there's plenty of alternatives. Number 2, engage in evangelism that is honest and respectful. I've made the joke, there are some honest apologists, and what I mean by that is they genuinely believe that there are answers for their faith, and they're genuinely seeking them, okay? The problem I have with a lot of apologetics and evangelism is they know what they're saying is demonstrably false, and yet they keep saying it anyway. Evangelism, I watch people like Todd Frell on Wretched, and I watch Ray Comfort and all the rest of them, and it's like, you're not interested in a genuine interlocutor. You're not a genuine conversation about faith. You have an agenda with your conversation. You're turning the conversation towards a certain end, and you're not really engaged in honest discussion with the person. In addition, if you keep saying things that I know are demonstrably false, okay, sorry, you can sit there and say evolution is a lie all you want, but it doesn't make it true. Okay, sorry, evolution has this demonstrability to it. It has testable, repeatable results. You can, in your evangelism, talk about certain events of the life of Jesus Christ, but if you don't have proof of those events, and I'll get to those a little bit later in my list, but it's this not being respectful enough to respect the intelligence and the knowledge of your opponent. I see this all the time whenever Christians get in debates with atheists. It was demonstrably seen in Alex O'Connor's debate with Dinesh. Dinesh just has this incredulous, I know something you don't know attitude when he's trying to talk to Alex, and Alex is just shooting him down with little quips because it's clear that he didn't really think about anything. And so the dishonesty often is Christians and apologists often want to take credit. Well, my Bible said that scientifically, but then you point out something else that the Bible is wrong about scientifically. Oh, well, it's not a science textbook, okay? And that's dishonest. Quit being dishonest and be respectful to the person that you're talking to. Part of this is the attitude that is displayed. I did a reaction this week of somebody talking about how, well, atheists can't know because, they don't have this special knowledge that we have. And I know something that you don't know, and that's why you don't believe. And that's just disrespectful. It's your ego being stroked and all that stuff. Until I see a major shift in apologetics, being more honest about what answers they actually do know and start to say, I don't know a lot more, just like the atheist, and quit being incredulous and being more respectful to the atheists and everybody else that they evangelize to, I don't think I could return to Christianity. I don't want to be part of that kind of hypocrisy, and I have too much integrity for that anymore, I guess, too much intellectual integrity for it, and so I don't want to go there. Number 3, prove the Gospels are history and not just hearsay collections of stories. I taught the life of Christ so many times. It is one of the big reasons that I left the faith was trying to reconcile the Gospels and then trying to also prove that the Gospels had any historical elements to them other than names of people and places, which any mythology can do. The real issue, of course, are some of the real events later, but I'll talk about that as reason 4 and 5. But to me, you have 4 people who collected stories that were being told by oral tradition, and in some of the cases of the later gospel writers, grabbing like Mark and using Mark as the basis of their gospel, like Luke and Matthew do. There is no historical collaboration for any of the events in the Gospels. Hardly, it's pure hearsay. Okay, sure, there's a Pontius Pilate, and sure, there's cities that are named, but, in the end, many mythologies get the names of cities and places right. That doesn't mean that what they're described as the historical events are correct. And so it's not history, okay? It's hearsay, okay? It's, I'll give you an example, several, I guess. When Matthew writes about the slaughter of the innocents, by Herod, number one, Matthew could not have witnessed that event himself. So where did he hear that story from? What is the historical source of that story? Who gave testimony to that story? And, what proof did they offer that happened? And there's no historical record of this happening. Herod, it would have been an atrocious act, and people didn't have a problem recording Herod's atrocious acts. So I find it hard that no other historical person believed those things. And, the Gospels themselves have the right to stand as history. No, they don't. Okay, they're making claims about history, and all historical claims have to have some sort of collaboration. You don't see, when we talk about Julius Caesar, we don't just take Julius Caesar's word for what he did. We have other things that collaborate Julius Caesar's existence and some of the things he did because other people wrote about him that were contemporaries. None of the events in the Gospels have any contemporary writing about them. And they're done way after the fact, where oral tradition has a way of embellishing things, okay? Because, the Christian's having a conversation across the campfire with this person, and they tell the story. Well, that doesn't make sense. Couldn't the disciples have just stole the body? Well, then all of a sudden the story starts to appear. Oh, no, the Jews paid off the guards to tell people that they stole the body. Where's the historical collaboration for that? I mean, I just did one talking about the resurrection. When I reacted to Papa Dale, my thoughts were along the line of, you have all these resurrections. Where is that historically accounted for? So you have all these stories that these gospel writers are just collecting, compiling, and trying to put in some sort of order. I mean, the writer of Luke pretty much admits this. He's just trying to put an order to the stories, and I think he does the same with Acts. There's a lot of hearsay, oral traditions about the Acts of the Apostles, and he's just trying to put them into some sort of historical order. And so, you got to prove to me that the Gospels are history. And right now, the best assessment I can give of the Gospels is the Gospel writers were collecting stories that everybody was telling and trying to put them in order, and they didn't verify anything. Okay, nothing. We don't even know who they are. Okay, it's certainly not the people that the church attributed it to. It's certainly not Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I would say that definitively. But whoever wrote them didn't give us any sources. And no, you can't use the excuses historians never gave their sources. That's not true. Ancient historians actually did document their sources. They knew the importance of that even way back then. And so if the Gospels were history, they would understand the importance of documenting their sources. The claim, and this gets out of the Gospel, the claim that he was seen by 500 people. Well, I used the example a couple videos ago of, 500 people saw Odin hanging from the world tree Yggdrasil, and thus proves the story. You would say, who are these 500 people, and what are their names, and what proof do you give that they say? What proof did they give that they saw this? And yet, when it comes to Paul's words in 1 Corinthians, it's like you just accept them. Oh, he's seen by 500 witnesses and all these other witnesses. And it's like, okay, you've named a few. What proof or evidence do they give? And who are these 500 people? It's a reasonable question to ask, and it doesn't prove anything, okay? So you're going to have to get to a big jump in the historicity of the life of Jesus Christ before I would ever even consider coming back. and it's way low, and the standards of evidence are just pitiful. You couldn't take anything in the Gospels to a court of law without it being rejected as hearsay. There are exceptions to hearsay. The Gospels don't meet those criteria. So, number 4, give me some testable, repeatable evidence that miracles exist. Okay, this is a big problem. Why the historicity of the Gospels is challenged in the first place is it has a lot of miracle stories in it. Walking on water, and loaves and fishes being multiplied, and people being healed of leprosy, and so on and so forth. But every time you go for evidence for these miracles or that miracles exist, it's just a story. And it's not like surrounding the gospel writers weren't tons of stories about miracles, tons of stories about virgin births, all this other stuff that existed. It's not that the gospel writers directly copied it, but the idea that the ideas of virgin births and miracles are so unique, nobody had ever written about this before, is utter nonsense. But at the same time, give me some testable, repeatable evidence that the natural order is suspended. Okay? At points. Show me how that happens in real life today. Because if we don't have any good, testable, repeatable evidence that miracles exist, those are extraordinary claims, that somehow the natural order was suspended. And this thing happened by the power of God. That should be testable, and it should be repeatable. A scientific study could be done on miracles. It's like, and yet, nothing. Not a single thing. I've looked at a lot of so-called evidence for miracles, and when you really get down to it, it's just people believed that they saw something or believed they experienced something. And when you look at it again, I'm a former Pentecostal, so I've seen all kinds of crap. I now recognize that as mentalist tricks, okay, that any mentalist magician could show you how they work. They are parlor tricks that could have been performed. I mean, a lot of what Jesus does even, he could have been a really good guy that understood a little bit about magic back in the day and realized that people were easy to fool. Okay, so you have that problem. You're going to have to prove to me that miracles exist, that the suspension of the natural order by a divine process exists, and give me some testable, repeatable results of how that works. And so far, nothing. Okay, I've looked at a lot of stuff. People send me crap all the time, and I look at it and it's like, this is not a scientific study. This is just a bunch of people saying they saw something. Well, anybody can say they saw something. Okay, it doesn't prove it. It's true. The problem with the argument from experience is that it's both the weakest and the strongest argument that most people follow. The weakest part of it is it's just your personal. You can't duplicate your own experience to other people. You can just talk about it. But that doesn't prove that it's true, and so it's kind of a weak argument in the first place. And even if a group of people say they saw something, doesn't mean that they all had an accurate portrayal of what they saw. I saw it in church services all the time in the Pentecostal church because the preacher would create this, this expectation, okay? And so everybody began to interpret whatever happened through the lens of expectation. If you expect that the Holy Spirit's going to do something, you give credit to the Holy Spirit and whatever it does during the service. Doesn't make it true that the Holy Spirit was involved. And so the whole miracle question is going to have to be answered for me. You're going to have to look at, from my perspective, I think Mr. Hume does an excellent, and I know William Lane Craig and several others, that tired old argument from Hume. And it's like, you haven't dismissed it with rationality and with evidence. You haven't. You want to hand wave Mr. Hume's argument against miracles away. I'm sorry, as a Christian and a theist, when I read Hume's argument, it bothered me because he was so dead on. Okay, and I knew it as a former Pentecostal believer at the time, and so and as a Pentecostal believer, when I was there, I read Hume several times, and now I say that his argument against the existence of miracles is probably one of the most ironclad arguments against. It doesn't matter how old it is. You still have to deal with it, okay? And until you meet his criteria, and even if you do then, there might be an alternative explanation we don't understand. He's right about that. And so there you have it. You're going to have to prove miracles exist because that's a large problem with the Gospels, is they're so full packed of miracles. How do I know that anything is true? Sorry, if you're going to bring in a miracle that's a suspension of the natural order, do I have any proof that the suspension of the natural order exists? No. All right, number 5, and of course the biggest miracle of all for Christianity is you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, something you could take into a court of law, that Jesus actually rose from the dead. Here's your problem. Everything you give from the gospel accounts is going to go before the judge, and the judge is going to say this is hearsay and set it aside. You don't have anything from the gospel, so you're going to have to find something else that proves that Jesus rose from the dead. Otherwise, all we have is claims that Jesus rose from the dead that have alternative explanations. I think Apologia does a great job here with his minimal witnesses theory. You know, too many people think that he's like, well, he's saying that that's what happened. No, he's not saying that that's what's happening. He's saying that this is the low bar that is necessary for Christianity to have developed without any miracle and without any resurrection. All you need when you look at the development of Christianity is for Paul and Peter to very sincerely believe that they've seen the resurrected Jesus. That's all you need, okay? And then they, you know, because I saw it in the Pentecostal church all the time. Somebody would say they experienced a miracle, and they tell people about it. And next thing you know, everybody believes that that miracle took place, and now they're starting to experience the same thing too. It's a herd mentality. And all you have to have is Peter coming up to somebody and saying, man, I saw Jesus Christ alive. I talked to him. And the next thing you know, all these people are having these resurrection stories and experiences. Post-traumatic appearances of dead people that are beloved are common when you really think about it. It happens a lot. I saw it happen when I was a minister, where people would come to me and say, oh, I saw my husband or my wife, you know, the other day, you know, and I knew that she was, you know, smiling down from heaven or whatever. And I know it's a psychological post-traumatic thing. You know, people who lose somebody they love and care for, this happens all the time. Okay, it's not like everybody or a majority, but a lot of people experience it. Well, all you need at that point, minimally, to get Christianity rolling, is Paul thinks he has something on the Damascus road that happens to him. And even in the book of Acts, the story is confusing because it changes the 3 times it's told. Okay, so, and then all you have to have is like Peter. You know, I saw Jesus, and he talked to me. And given the fact that maybe, you know, if the story about him betraying, you know, denying Christ is true, which could be, I would see why he would feel guilty about that and want to, you know, have some closure for that, and a post-traumatic experience would make it. And what Apologia is saying is that's not necessarily what happened, but this is the minimal bar that is required for Christianity to develop. And Paul is a mystic. He's obviously got some, you know, real energy to him as a person. And so a lot of Christianity and Christian doctrine owes its existence to one man, Paul. Okay, so Paul creates Christianity in large part himself, particularly Christianity for the Gentiles. That's his creation. And then you have Peter, who creates the Christianity for the Jews. And they're all in this apocalyptic mindset anyway. Okay, like any cult can be put into a mindset. And so, no, I don't think that's the only two things that happen, but that's the only 2 things that are necessary for Christianity to develop. You don't need a resurrection for this religion to develop. You just need to have a really strong belief that the resurrection happened, whether there's evidence for it or not, and then other people believe it and so on, and they begin to have experiences. I think there was more, you know, once Peter or whoever started having these post, you know, death, resurrection experiences of Jesus, all of a sudden everybody's having them, you know, and sooner or later this whole thing just gets concocted larger and larger, and then, well, where, you know, people start asking the question, where is Jesus? So, well, the story of him ascending into heaven begins to develop. And, you know, people, when they really want to believe something, they will talk about anything. The idea that the origin of Christianity is any way unique because of the resurrection of Jesus Christ is just nonsense, okay? Because a lot of religions have started with some sort of experience that somebody had, and a whole bunch of people believed it, and then it grew, okay? You're going to have to prove to me that the resurrection actually happened without this possibility. You have to, the purpose of Apologia or any of my theories of how Christianity started is to demonstrate to you that there are very mundane, very real, very psychological, sociological reasons of how Christianity could have developed, and no miracle is required. None whatsoever. Okay, there's no resurrection required for this to have happened. We're not saying that that's what did happen, but we're telling you there's other alternative explanations that are perfectly reasonable of how this religion developed. And the problem with it is it became very popular. Okay, just because a religion becomes popular doesn't mean it's true. It's one of the apologetic tropes. Well, Christianity is popular and has had a major influence on Western culture. So, doesn't mean it's true. Okay, there's plenty of things that have had influence on Western culture. Doesn't mean they're true. So, those are the 5 things. Demonstrate that Christianity actually transforms life. Engage in evangelism that is honest and respectful. Actually follow the commands in your Bible. Show to me that Christians can act in a way they're supposed to, because I don't see it on this channel 90% of the time. There are some good Christians that come here and have debated with me over time. Usually they give up after a while. Some of them still hang around, but they're not engaging me in a way that demonstrates, the kindness of Christianity, so to speak. I've gotten better kindness from the atheist community than I ever got from the Christian one. Prove the Gospels are history and not hearsay collections of stories. Give it evidence that is testable and repeatable that miracles exist. And the most important miracle, prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Jesus actually rose from the dead, and that there aren't alternative explanations that are possible. Okay? And here's the problem with all those. I don't think you can do it, and I don't think you ever will. Okay? I don't think that's even possible. One of the great problems is that these are very insurmountable problems. And so, comment away. These are the, if those 5 things would change, and I might consider being a Christian again, but right now, I know too much. When people, I remember when I was at work one time, a long time ago, and my department manager at the time, and I were hitting it off. Her and I were, getting along, being good friends and stuff, and talking about stuff, and we'd work on stuff together, so we'd talk while we're working. We have the ability to do that, unlike some. And she asked me point blank, why don't you believe anymore? Why are you an atheist? And I flat out told her, I know too much. And part of it is this knowledge of where Christian origins really stand, the knowledge of, after 30 years as a Pentecostal, I now would have to come to the conclusion I didn't see a single real miracle in a church that is supposedly dominated by miracles. As proof of their authenticity, I now can look at every miracle, so-called miracle, as some other alternative explanation, mentalist tricks, sleight of hand, whatever you want to call it, psychological conditioning, peer pressure, whatever you want to say. Those are all very good explanations of what happens in so-called miracles. And the resurrection of Jesus Christ, the more I studied it, the more I tried to find historical evidence for it, doesn't exist. The gospel claims about the resurrection are contradictory. That's because they're collections of stories and not collections of historical events. Okay? They're just putting these together. Who are these authors of the Gospels, and where did they get their information? Perfectly reasonable question to ask, and the Gospels don't answer those questions. None of them tell you who wrote them, and none of them tell you where they got the information from. Just because they get a few historical persons and places right, that doesn't change the fact that historical fiction writers do that too. Okay, I always give a great example here, of Abraham Lincoln being the vampire slayer. Well, Abraham Lincoln existed, the Civil War existed. Do you really think that Abraham Lincoln was going around killing vampires? Okay, so we can say Pontius Pilate existed, and we can say, Caesar Augustus existed, and we can say Jerusalem and, Tyre and Sidon and all these places mentioned in the Bible existed. Doesn't mean that what happened has happened in the Gospels happened in those cities and happened with those people. Okay? Don't have anything that collaborates any of that. So this is where you're at, Christians. You don't seem to show any evidence that you transformed lives. You're disrespectful to those people that are against you. I know not all of you. Some of you have been very respectful. Thank you very much. And you haven't proven that miracles exist. You haven't proven that the Gospels are anything more than a collection of mythological stories about Jesus. And there's a lot of ways that that could have happened. And you haven't given me any reason to think that there isn't a more mundane reason as to why Christianity started and got going, and that the resurrection of Jesus Christ is not a historical event, it's a claimed event, which I don't think happened. Okay, I think a legend grew because a few sincere people believed a falsehood, and that happens all the time. It just so happens that Christianity became very popular. If it wasn't there, something else would be, I'm sure. We're incurably religious at times, and so that's kind of it. That's it for this major presentation. A few other things going on. Yeah, got the haircut, shaved off the side of the beard because hot. Okay. My hypersensitivity heat and light is going off the chart right now these days. And I finally said, it's kind of a necessity for me to get an air conditioner for my apartment to get rid of the one. And I'm altering some curtains in the house here to kind of deal with the brightness aspect of it. For those of you who don't know, I'm autistic, probably high probability of being autistic. And that's why I don't look in the camera, and that's why I have a hard time looking people in the eye. I also have some odd traits, and unless I want you to know what emotion am I experiencing, you'll never know. That autistic masking thing, I really do well. But part of that is hypersensitivity, and two of the big problems that I have right now in summer is light and heat. And those things, light makes me anxious, and heat makes me depressed. And so it goes back and forth. And so, and so cutting off the hair and shaving off the beard. And, I haven't been baby-faced in a long, long time, so I kept the goatee, but, I'll grow it back when it gets cold again. When fall hits, I'll probably do a no-shave, September, October, November for me. But we'll see when it cools down when it happens. But also a lot of other things are happening. Just enjoying life in some respects, but really lacking motivation in a lot of things because of aforementioned hypersensitivity. So, today I've got to pick up the gumption to pick up this place because it's starting to get a little bit messy. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Heading into some different directions. The other day I sat down and said, okay, I want to rewrite my story, my deconversion story. A lot of people have asked about that. I'm using the videos I did at the end of last year as kind of the basis of that, but there's also, I want to write it in such a way that the narrative is also a discussion of the common reasons that people have for believing in God and why I don't think that they're good reasons. Okay, so when I get to those struggles, when I'm in Bible college, dealing with the arguments for the existence of God, what's going to happen in the book is you hear the arguments for the existence of God, all the apologetic evidence I learned in apologetics class, and why all of them failed for me at that point, and why I began to look for stuff. So that's kind of, and having to rewrite it that way is taking a little bit more time than I would hope, but there's that. Some of my other writing is kind of stalled because of hypersensitivity. I lack so much energy right now. That's why I ordered an air conditioner, and hopefully it's going to arrive middle of the week, and hopefully that'll make a lot of difference in how I feel about things. But it's a real struggle at the moment, so I'd ask you to pray for me, but I don't believe in that shit anymore. So there's that. Just going forward, I have to thank everybody, just watching videos and doing what you guys do. The revenue from this channel is starting to become a nice monthly bonus that kind of gets me over the hump, okay, in a lot of ways. It allows me to do some extra things. My car is slowly being healed of its many maladies, thanks to you guys. I am really debating with myself whether or not to just bite the bullet, and I've got enough money saved up. I really need a new CPU. This laptop is starting to have a lot of funky issues, so So far, it hasn't affected my ability to record stuff and things like that, but I really need something better that will allow me to process things faster and do things faster. I'm working with a 3-year-old laptop that was 2-year-old technology when I bought it, so it's like 5 years behind, and it's got some mechanical issues, and I can't use my Bluetooth on it anymore because that burned out. So it's just a matter of saying, okay, I'm going to bite the bullet, and I may just get a CPU that's kind of a placeholder for a couple of years until I get what I really want, something that's a little more affordable, but we'll see. But that, in a large part, is thanks to you, and thanks to my employer right now paying extra money for the summer. So we pay a summer premium where I work, so getting a little bit more money for that. So I'm going to utilize that to get some things done in the summer before that goes away. Other things that are going on. I'm doing an experiment. I have made it no secret that I would love to find love before the year is over. And this is me just being real. People ask me why I talk about this stuff on Rabyd Reflections, and it's like, I think people need to see an atheist as a human being. They've been so indoctrinated as atheists don't have morals, and they're just these machines, and they create this mechanical robotic thing about us, and then that's not the way we work. That's not the way we operate. We operate just like any other human being. And part of that is love and romance, and my largest problem, of course, is my extreme introversion. My daughter even talked to me about this for the last couple times we've met. How you doing on that front? And it's like, yeah. My largest problem is society, and I'm going to be honest, the dating world is really dystopian. It's just really bad to me, and a large part of it is the dating apps. And on a lark, I've decided to do an experiment, with one of the dating apps in particular. That dating app is particularly known for just being hookup culture. And I said, you know what, let's see what happens if I change my profile to what they expect the profile to be about. Let's change the goals from long-term relationship to short-term looking for long, just looking for friends, just looking for fun, kind of thing, and knowing what that 3-letter word fun stands for, another 3-letter word. And the whole year I've been just playing around with this app just to see what it's like, and man, I now am firmly convinced that there are a lot of people out there that are just looking to get laid, and that's not what I'm looking for. Okay, so because the whole year I've had this app, I got it because I wanted to see what it did. And so the last 3 weeks, I've changed my profile to all that stuff that you're expected on that app, the one that has the little flame symbol, because I don't want to get in trouble. I changed my profile to all the short-term stuff. Before that, for the entire year, I think I got 5 likes. Since I've changed my app, in the last 3 weeks, I have gotten, I want to say 8 to 10 likes within 3 weeks, like twice as much. And I'm like, oh, well, shit, that proves that theory. Now, I know it's anecdotal evidence. It's not really scientific, but... And I've now come to the painful conclusion that these apps are never designed to actually help you find anything, because if you find love and get a relationship, what are they going to do for you anymore? They lose you as a customer. I don't want to pay money for that crap. So goodbye. I just have, when I talk about dating apps now from a social point of view, I don't deal with it anymore. So there's that. The other thing, somebody asked me about what I think about the poll results these days in the presidential race here in the United States, and I've been watching it ever since the conviction. Trump has been hemorrhaging his support, and the Republicans are going to definitely have a major question to ask themselves when the convention comes around, because the delegates sent to vote for Trump are going to have to ask themselves a question: can we win with this guy? He's already lost to Biden once, and since his conviction, it doesn't look like he's going to win again. So why do we want to stick with somebody that's not going to win when we have Biden as a vulnerable opponent, and he is vulnerable? Why don't we go with somebody else that can actually go after him? Okay, that doesn't have all these other problems. And so I guess we'll see what happens. I'm very waiting with anxious anticipation, probably like the rest of the country, about what the sentencing is going to bring. So we'll see what happens there. I'm not going to make any predictions or anything. Politics is way too volatile to make predictions way ahead of time. You're just going to either get lucky or unlucky. So, in your predictions. So we'll see what happens. I think that's pretty much it for this week. I wanted to get those 5 reasons, 5 things that Christians could do to get me back into the fold, and I'm not holding my breath. So that's that. So thanks for stopping by. I appreciate every like, share, and subscribe. You guys are awesome. There's many ways to support the channel, from super thanks to super chat when there's a premiere and so on and so forth. Make sure you can do that. I have my PayPal link in the description if you want to do that. That's always appreciated. Thank you very much. A lot of what financial support is going forward has put me in a more comfortable position to make some of the decisions I've had to make recently. So thank you very much for that. And also, the best way to support the channel more tangibly is membership. Any content creator, really. So hit the join button and you'll see your options for citizenship. It starts at $2 and goes up from there. So it's very affordable to become a citizen of the Rabyd Nation. And just want to give a shout out to my members, to my citizens, to my Rabyd citizens, to my tribunes at present. Thank you very much. You guys are awesome. It's more than just the financial support. It's the emotional support that helps somebody, a content creator like me, say, hey, okay, I'm finally doing something valuable to other people. So thank you very much for that. And as always, live your best life. You only get one go around and then it's over. And there is no afterlife. So you want to take all your time, your money, and opportunities and spend it on yourself, on the people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. And don't waste them on the trappings of religion and faith, because that's a dead end. I speak from experience. And as always, thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you next time.